Welcome back, everyone, to the Soul Journeys Great Awakening podcast. I am excited to share the stage, so to speak, with Marie Fleming Grant. She is the founder of the Awake Revolution and assists people with creating a fulfilled life of meaning, magic, and purpose. She guides and activates people to drop the baggage, wake up to who they really are, and revolutionize how they think, feel, live, and create. So you can learn more about Marie at theawakerevolution.com. And based on the name of her company, I'm sure you're not surprised that Marie is joining us today because we're going to go there. We're going to go there with all the things and all the magic. Right, Marie?
Definitely.
Welcome. I'm excited
Oh,
to have you on the show.
thank
You and I
you.
connected because I saw some things you were posting online, and I was like, this woman gets it. She gets it with a capital G. And then, we've been playing footsie with each other and having a great time and chatting and connecting. So I'm excited to have you come on and share your magic because I feel like each of us holds a piece of this puzzle, and there'll be something that you'll share today that'll probably come out of your mouth and you won't even know why it's coming out of your mouth, but it'll be meant to activate, in some way. And so I'm excited to see where we end up going with the
Mm.
conversation today. So thank you for being
Oh,
here.
thanks for having me. I love it. I love a good old conversation about all of this stuff. So yeah, anything we can cover, whatever we want to cover, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, maybe it would be helpful, I think, to go over a little bit of your background, right? Like
Mm.
how did you go from coming out of the womb
Mm.
and doing an eeny, meeny, miny, mo of all the things you could do with your life, and then you ended up leading the Awake Revolution.
Yeah. So I think I always knew I wanted to help people. I think I had that probably like yourself as well. Always as a little girl knew I was didn't know what it was. I knew I was here for more. I always had this sense that I'd had many lives. I was very didn't learn that, in this lifetime with my family. So I always felt like I just had this knowledge. So I somehow convinced myself that law would be a great fit for me. So I ended up being a child protection lawyer. That was my first sort of big, career move. And it was my way of really wanting to just get out into the world and help the vulnerable, right? Help people and represent the people that couldn't represent themselves. So I was so passionate about that. And I did that sort of with my daughter. I had my daughter very young when I collected my sort of results in college. So I did the kind of very young, early responsibility. And I worked my way, and I was very sort of ambitious, focused on the goals, and I did all that kind of way of living. So I qualified and loved it. But then after a few years doing especially the child protection work with all the government cuts in the UK, the whole sort of social care system changed and became just so highly stressful on top of the usual stress. So very long story short, I burnt myself out very successfully. But it was a combination of a very stressful job, lots of my personal traumas and emotional stuff, and all my kind of way of living just caught up with me. So, on the surface, it always sounds great when you're successful, but it was really cost me. So the way I did it was just absolutely exhausting. I didn't connect with myself. I didn't know really how to look after myself. So I just kind of lived this very, I would say, like an autopilot life. So it was really only when I was forced into, I got so ill, I started getting sort of fatigue, real signs of burnout, and I carried on pushing, for a couple of years. But it wasn't until it got really severe, and this is, I think we're hearing more and more about this kind of burnout now, with people. I got so bad, my body literally just broke down and stopped working. So I got diagnosed back in 2012 with chronic fatigue, ME. So, and sort of fibromyalgia as well. So it got so bad where my body just stopped working. So I couldn't do that mind over matter push through to get up and go to work. I had to stop. So that's where my life completely, everything, like the rug was pulled out from underneath me, and everything really was just stripped away. Lost money, the status that I had really used for validation, relationships, the whole lot. And I was just kind of stuck in the house and really stuck with my own self. with no distractions. So that's when I really started connecting in and connecting into the traumas, the stresses, all the baggage, all the heavy stuff that I've been carrying. And the doctors here said it was just sort of, managing your symptoms. Once you're in this position, it's just kind of, you have to live with it. So me being me, I just decided that that was not going to be how I was going to live. And I've got the ability, I'm very fortunate that I do, that I can just see beyond the reality. And I've always been able to do that. So, had to hit rock bottom first. I really did. And I did consider not wanting to carry on anymore. I really did. I was very depressed, very anxious. But somewhere amongst that, I got this kind of activation, this sense that, no, I'm here for a reason. There's something, you're going through all of this for a reason. It isn't just for nothing. So I sort of found a little bit of a meaning in the dark, and then I started to research to try and find a way out. And I found, the next training, the next healing modality. I found a clinic to kind of go in and do a recovery program with, and then bit by bit I just pieced my world back together, did a lot of healing, a lot of transformation. And then that's when I started to think, oh, I don't want to go back and do, the legal job that I did. I really want to help people. And now I'm going to do it in a more direct way. So then that's when I started to train in coaching, EFT, hypnotherapy, all sort of different modalities. And that's what sort of catapulted me into, oh, I can help people, I can work with people, I'll set up online and I'll have a website and I'll do all these things. And yeah, it was just a journey, and I've been continuing that journey because it never ends, ever since. So that's kind of what led me into doing this work. And then of course with current events, it's just, the mission has just been revved up from last year. So I really, really now am sort of, another activation has happened for me, several of them, where I'm really now starting to remember, no, I know why I came into this world, and I know why I came into this role. So it's sort of piecing together these remembrances, and that's what's been happening for me this year. So everything's changed again in a great way.
That's amazing. So you don't know this, but I worked in forensics. I investigated crimes against children for
Wow.
many, many years. And then I
Okay.
moved up the ranks of that organization, and I was in court a gazillion hours and wrote a
Wow. Okay.
gazillion affidavits and was on the stand, and actually had to present as a lawyer because a lot of times my lawyer wouldn't show up and I'd have to like present the case.
Oh
But I
no.
share this
Wow.
because you were mentioning some things, and I had a similar journey. I burnt out, my body shut down. I think for those of us that are so sensitive, right, we just absorb stuff. Like you and I were talking before we started recording, that in some ways going out into the world right now, even if we're going to navigate it without a mask, even if we're going to take a stand and have little acts of rebellion and try to activate that out into the world, when you're so energetically sensitive, it's a challenge um, to when you're around that kind of energy, right? And so I felt like I was absorbing the trauma from my coworkers that were going out and unknowingly being activated by what they were having to go out on. And then of course my own stuff, and then of course the trauma with the clients I was dealing with. And I had all the heavy cases. I was investigating all of the contentious,
Mm.
the politicians, the celebrities, the like, I was getting those kind of cases. And then, of course, going to court and all the conflict and just always feeling like you're up against conflict, right? So
Mm.
I feel like that prepared me for this time in a lot of ways because I'm used to dealing with conflict. Do I seek it out? No. And I'm guessing you probably feel the same way,
Mm.
right? We kind of pick and choose, but we also know our rights. We know the lingo. I'm totally cool if I were to get fined right now or arrested for breaking mandates, which aren't even laws, because I know how to stand for myself in a courtroom, and I know I make a really good witness, and I know you do as well. So I
Mm.
think for those of us that have this kind of background, it's actually easier for us to lead right now because there's a strength, and there's like you said, a deepening into the mission where we can hold energy in such a way that we can be a model for how to carry
Mm.
ourselves through the world without backing down and without being intimidated and that kind of stuff. So
Definitely, because I remember last year in 2020 when it all kicked off, and I suddenly, it's like I came alive, and it was kind of interesting to observe myself. And you're probably similar, where everybody kind of was sort of sinking, understandably. But that's when I suddenly thought, oh, I know this energy, not that I, as you said, don't want to seek it out, but there was almost like a familiarity with, I know how to, it's like I'm built for this time. And that's kind of how I feel now.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I'm built to stand strong in the middle of this craziness, because it's just what I've been training for. And it now makes a lot more sense when I look back, with all the things we've gone through, right? It's just trained us into our strength, which I think is totally
Mm-hmm.
deliberate. Definitely.
Totally.
Mm,
Well, even the part of why I brought it up too is the trauma piece, right? Because you and I are very well versed in trauma, meaning we know what actual 911 looks like. We know what actual, you know, crisis looks like. And we know what trauma looks like. We know how to help people with trauma. We know the impact of trauma. And so part of what I became aware of last year, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, is that there was a lot of people already had unresolved trauma coming into 2020, not even knowing what was going to hit them. And then there was all kinds of layers of trauma
mm,
from, depending on where you were in your awakening journey, right? If you all of a sudden realized the life you built was kind of built on lies in a lot of ways, or because of our understanding of the world. And then that already meant, like, how do I grieve my future that I thought I was going to have, that I'm not going to have? Plus the day-to-day stuff of maybe not being able to see people. Maybe someone's in a long-term care facility and you now can't
mm.
visit them. Maybe you're having to attend a funeral on Zoom, those kind of things. That this compounded trauma seems to, I think some people have gone beyond fight or flight and they're now in freeze, right? Because it's astounding to me after a year, when the virus should have died in warm weather, when, I could go on and on and on,
Mm,
that it's still going on and people are still like, well, the government said, and of course it did, and I'm just going to do what I'm told, right? That
mm.
seems to me like a pretty standard trauma response, to just go along with the authority and what we're being told. So how do we, or do we focus on snapping people out of that? Where do we, for those of us that are awake right now, where do we focus our energy?
Yeah, that's a challenging one, isn't it? I think it depends on their level of where they're at. So if we know what we know and we're looking at people who are very plugged into that, I personally think there's a limit to what we can do, because a lot of people who are awakened are putting so much energy into, literally trying to grab your loved ones by the shoulders or your friends to make them see. And I think that's where we go wrong. You can't make them see. I think the best you can do for those fully plugged in people is to show them, like, love, show them information. If they ask you, if they're interested, there's a window there. You can show them information, do it with love and do it with compassion. Because the way I see it is almost like you're imagine if you have a friend who's in a very abusive relationship, she's really being abused. Often they don't know that they're being abused. They still trust their partner. They hope that they're going to change, or that, they're still locked into that. And you can have well-meaning friends telling you get rid of them, but they're not ready to. So we wouldn't
Mhm.
get really angry with them in that situation, right? We'd understand they're in this abusive relationship, they can't even see. So that's how I kind of see people now. So it's not easy, right, when you can see, but I don't think you can really wake someone up. They have to have a window where they, even if they're asked, like I have loved ones where they're in there. When they ask me questions, I'll share what I know, but I'll do it very lovingly. I won't do it in a dictatorial. It's hard, right? It's like, you've got to see this. Just share what you share and let them come to their own ways of thinking. But then that requires us to really just be okay with that. And that's challenging. I'm not saying that's easy, because I think I've had to work on that myself, of like, how do I make peace and accept that they are where they are. If they're really asking questions, that's different. You can have a real conversation, but it's when they're
Mhm.
not, what can you do with it? There's different levels, isn't
Mhm.
it?
Mhm.
Mm,
Yeah, we just had, at the time, for those of you listening, we're just coming off Easter weekend as we're recording this, and my parents were here. And my mom's pretty awake, right? But my
mm,
dad is like frenetically checking the numbers and constantly plugging in. And they're very offended right now because where
mm.
they were living, it was pretty much in the green as far as the color coding goes.
Yeah.
And then now they've shut down the whole, area again, and they're not understanding why. And that for most people has now sparked them to say, wait a minute, this is starting to feel personal. Why are they
Mm.
going after small businesses when these big box stores can stay open? But anyways, I don't even remember what I said to him, but he said, listen, people don't plan anything. Look at how this world's run. Nobody ever plans anything, right? That's what the issue is. And I'm like, oh, this is maybe what the mindset is that people can't even get their head around the fact that in fact there may have actually been a very well planned out agenda, because they see the day-to-day functioning of humans and saying people don't really plan. And
Mm.
so it was just interesting, but I could see that some of the questions I posed to him, because I don't back down, right? Like
Mm.
I pick and choose, and I know you do as well. But in
Yeah.
this case, it's my dad, so
Yeah.
I can say to him, "You're full of shit," basically, right? And here's why. And so I basically said that, but with love. Like I was
Yeah.
talking in this exact tone, but just basically said, "Hey, what about these things?" And I don't even remember what it was, but I remember seeing the look on his face. There's something that, as you know, that happens in people's eyes where
Mm.
there's like a critical thinking switch that goes on in their eyes, and I could see that I got in there. And who knows what they're going to do. They seem to think that the only way they're going to be able to travel is with a vaccine,
Mm.
and they really set on traveling. And they're also at a different stage in life, right? They spent their whole life working hard, they retired, they want to travel, they want to
Mm.
spend time with friends. And so if they're in their mind, if the only thing standing between them and doing that is a vaccine, then they're going to go ahead and do that. And I feel like this is where the mastery comes in, right? For those of us that are awake, like, how, if we're going to operate in universal laws, how do you know that the vaccine, which really isn't, it's a experimental treatment, right? By the way,
Mhm.
how do you get a passport? How do you get a vaccine passport for something that isn't even a vaccine? I don't understand
I know, it
the
drives me
logistics of that,
insane.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But all of these people that are putting conditions on that,
Mm.
and so yeah, how do we, knowing that we're not going to wake people up per se, like, yes, maybe there's something we're going to say that's going to plant a seed.
Mm.
I do feel like each of us has a switch inside of ourselves where we just go, oh, we all of a
Yeah.
sudden something happens. There's a
Yeah.
day that we wake up, and I almost feel like it's built into our chart.
Mm.
For those of us that are awake, how do we lead ourselves through this, and how do we lead other people that are awake through this?
Mm. So you mean other people who are just as awake as you, like on the same kind of
Yeah,
level?
or
Yeah.
relatively. Yeah.
Relatively around. Yeah. So I think that's where I think it's about not fighting the old stuff. So there's two things, isn't there? It's like the old stuff's
Mm,
dismantling, and we know we're moving into the new kind of way of doing it. So we're visionaries, right? People that are awakened, we are visionaries. So we know there's stuff there, but it's like we're in the middle here of like, well, we're not in that new future yet, but we're unplugging from that. So I think it's just it's a bit of a practice and a bit of a juggling act, but putting your energy more in not fighting the old, standing your ground and staying steady when you need to, as we talked about before, right? We were saying, when you need to stand up and sort of let people know that's, it's unlawful for you to ask me about my medical exemptions or whatever, so when to stand your ground. But I think really putting your energy, because that's what I think that we're here for, is really putting more of our energy into, well, where are we going to go, what do we want to bring in, and where are we going to lead ourselves, because that's what we need to do. Because yes, we're in a war. I think I'd see it as a spiritual war on our consciousness, but we don't fight it like the other wars. We don't, it's not about fighting and violence. And yeah, some of that's going to happen, I'm sure, in some places, but it isn't even about even the protesting. It's, maybe there's some merits in that sometimes, but I think it's much more about our own energy. And I think we've got to remember that even if we're quietly at home, some of us have lots of following, some of us are active, in our work, some of us are just living our lives at home and we're not very visible. But it's working on your own energy, really focusing. It's kind of almost counterintuitive to kind of say, don't focus out there where all the stuff's happening, bring it back to you, and really, now more than ever, to focus on your own energy and vibration and frequency, because that is the most powerful way. I really believe that that's the most powerful way through this whole thing. And that's what's going to do it. There's enough of us on this planet who are awake, And it's tempting to, like, I love to roll my sleeves up and have a good old like, you know, confrontation sometimes. It's like, okay, let's do it. I do. It's like my old lawyer self is still there.
Yeah.
But I also know, no, that's not, you can do that, but it's like we need to do more than that. So I think the way through it is to really work on yourself. So not about perfection, but it's about which bits of you still need healing. Like I use this now as a practice ground, like a training ground. Like every time I go out into the world or even online, when I get triggered, it happened today. I got triggered by something I saw on YouTube or something. And I was like, oh, this is coming inside of me. Okay, what's this coming from? What's that old wound? What am I needing to do or not needing to do? And then I just take it back to myself and just do whatever I need to do to clear that, release it, make peace with it. Because I think if we do that, we're 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 more awakened than the average person out there. So it's like we've got this responsibility to be the best, highest version of ourselves. And I really believe that's going to create the higher timeline. It's got to. It's just how energy works. So I think that's where because sometimes we're like fumbling around going, what do we do in this? You know? And sometimes it can feel a bit not selfish, but we can have this doubt thinking, should I be focusing on myself at this time when there's so much pain and suffering out there? Actually, yeah, I do. I believe that you should, because then you're going to ripple out to all the people that you know, that you come into contact with. And actually, you might awaken somebody in your family just by being present in your energy. It might be nothing you say.
Mm-hmm.
It might be you just be with your loved one, and something about your vibration, as you said, there's almost like everyone has that switch that we all have
Mm-hmm.
it. It's like a thing that just needs to go off at the right time. Sometimes just by being around your light will make that person maybe come out of fear a little bit, maybe drop into their body a little bit. And then there's a little window that maybe some of this information gets to go in. Like, we don't know how that's going to happen. We think if we tell them enough information, I've done it with my own family. It's like if I keep telling them stuff, and then I've realized, no, it's not going in. It's like I'm just going to be the brightest, highest version of myself, and trust that any activations that happen through my voice, through my energy, will just happen, because you don't need to try. And I think that's it. It means we've got to remember our true power. We've got to really remember who we really are, really and truly, because that's why we came.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
You can feel that in your body.
Yeah. So, with respect to this year, we can feel like this is still going to be. Last year, I feel like was a year of upheaval. It was a lot of things, but it was definitely an upheaval year. This upheaval has led to a year of uncertainty, among other things. So, what are some of the energies that you're seeing for this
Mm.
year, and how do we navigate those energies?
So this year it feels like change, very changeable. I'd say chaotic. So it's not good or bad. It's just upheaval, chaos, a lot of it's like you think we're going here and then all of a sudden we go here. It's like a year of plot twists. So it's like if this was a box set, you'd be on the edge of your seat going, what the hell is coming next? It's like that. So I think, as we've probably already felt, where April now, every month has been really different, hasn't it? The energy. Like January seemed to last about 4 months. It's like the longest month. And February just went really quick. And March to me felt very, very powerful, very big. So I think it's being flexible and just trying to find ways to be okay with uncertainty, which is, it goes against our human nature. We want certainty, we want
Mm-hmm.
stability, but if you can find a way to just get really as comfortable as you can with the movement, which is why, if you've had a lot going on in your life and you've had a colorful life, you're going to be more comfortable with that, as we spoke about, right? We've had these kind of very interesting lives, so that's why we're kind of more at peace with moving. People that have had more of a stable life, maybe less trauma in a funny way, they might be struggling with this kind of year more. In numerology, we're in a 5, universal year, which is all about freedom, adventure, but the flip side of that is restriction and clashing with authority. So that's why we're seeing a lot of, it doesn't surprise me, I kind of knew this was coming this year, where we're going to, all the vaccines, the passport talk, the restriction on our movement, it's all coming up into the energy field this year. So it feels very difficult. You know, you might be feeling squeezed, cornered, a bit stuck, but if you understand that's just the energy coming up into the surface, it looks like it's getting worse, it's not, it's just getting visible, and it's just coming up into the conscious field. I think it's always been there, but I think, so this is why I feel like it's like you need to have a steady piece of ground underneath you every single day, and that's what I've been focusing on. So like when the world around you goes to shit and everything's just, you know, like chaos, if you can find a steady piece of ground that you can just stand on, that's going to help you. That's going to help you, well, stay sane and just move through the energy. Because I think even, you know, we're April, we've got quite a lot to go this year, and we're going to change continuously. And having techniques and tools where you can ground, you can calm, and also to release your emotions. Because I think to expect yourself to get through this, is awakened as you are, and you know, even light workers, you know, we're leading other people, but you're still going to have your human emotions here. And it's not a time, I believe, to just be, you know, blinkers on and positive your way through this. Part of this journey is to really feel your way through it. Like last year I went through, you know, went like down the rabbit hole, and you know, you're learning about some of the really dark stuff, you know, in the world. Like I feel like I grieved that. Still hard when I see it, but I feel like I allowed myself last year. I cried, I got angry, I raged, I was like a storm with it. I let it, you know, I really felt that. Because then it's like a grieving process. You move through that. You've got to let yourself experience this emotion, because then when you're through it, you can then look at it, and sure, it's still horrible, but you can look at it and you can handle it. And the reason we need to do that is because when other people learn about it, maybe this year, maybe next year, maybe in 2 years, they're going to all fall to pieces, and we're going to need to be the strongest warriors that we are. That's why we're learning about this first. It's kind of a comfort there. It's like, that's why if you ever feel like, oh, you're the only person that knows all this stuff and everyone around you can't see it, there's a method to that madness. It's because we're meant to go sort of forging ahead. We'll deal with it first, we'll soak it up, we'll process it, we'll transmute it, we'll come out the other end, and then when everybody starts to wake up and really freak out, we will be the light and we'll be able to hold that. And I think that's kind of a nice way to see it, because it means you're doing this for a purpose, if that makes sense. So yeah, I just think it's got, because as light workers and awakened people, sometimes we put pressure on ourselves to just feel like, well, we've got to have it all sorted, we've got to be the strongest version of ourselves. Well, it's okay to cry, it's okay to have a week of you just want to close the curtains and block it all out for a bit. That's okay. In fact, that might be required sometimes, you know. So you can, it's almost like we'll get like burnt out again, right? But in a new way, and we don't want to do that. So it's really like, what I've learned from my burnout, I think, is really like, if I'm upset, be upset, journal, meditate, do EFT tap. I like to do EFT tapping, that helps me. Whatever your method, but just feel it, feel your way through it, and that's okay. There's a lot of pressure sometimes.
When people do wake up, what do you mentioned they're going to freak out, right? What do you think the biggest thing is that's going to freak them out?
Oh well, it's one of many, isn't it? I think one of them could just be, I have to really put myself in their shoes because I don't see it, but one of them will be like, our government doesn't care about us. I mean, to us that's completely obvious, but it's like, that is a huge thing in itself, right? If you put yourself in that position, it's like, all this time I thought the government really cared about our well-being, and the science was real science, and it was all for our good, and that's going to be a holy crap moment. anything to do with the children and the trafficking and all of that, that's just dark. It's the darkest of the dark. I think a huge one will be when we know about celebrities, well-known people. That can be quite crushing. I definitely had a couple of moments last year going, holy crap, not that person, not that person. It's like, I think we might have a lot of psychotic breakdowns, is what I feel for some, because if you suddenly, it's like we're having a chance now to awaken in kind of as a rosy as way possible. But if you haven't seen any of it and you've been somebody who's really resistant and you don't want to listen and you just want to look over here, when it all comes out, they're going to have quite a rude awakening, I think, some people, because they're going to have to see all these aspects that have just fallen away. At least we've done them in stages and we've kind of done it in, you know, on a journey. But for some people, I think our mental health issues are going to skyrocket. I think a lot of people who are here to be healers, and in all sorts of ways, that's when we're going to be needed the most, I think. Sometimes I know a lot of people are sort of fumbling around at the moment thinking, I know I'm here for a reason, I'm on my mission, but I can't plug into anything yet. Some people, your time is going to be next year, year after, and beyond, because I think there's so much healing. So I think suicides are going to happen. I really do. I still see the big vision. I'm very optimistic and positive because I know, like, I can look over there and see it, got that. But I'm under no illusion that between now and then is going to be easy. Even if we're choosing the higher timelines and we're doing all our inner work, we can still have a much better day-to-day reality, but we're still part of this collective. So even if we're creating amazing results in our businesses and our lives and our relationships, we're still part of the collective. So we are going to have to go through some of that alongside people, and it's tough because we're heart-centered people and we're going to feel a lot of that, all the empaths, clairsentients, you know, people who just feel, intuitives. So that's why I think the number one thing is to really, really use this year to look after yourself, get everything as strong as possible, like anything you can do, you know, get your routines in place, get your boundaries in place. If you know you've got triggers and old stuff that you're still carrying, make room, make some time to heal that and process that, because you're going to need to clear that space. I think this is a great time to do it because it's still chaotic, but we've still got time and space. I think as we go forwards, I feel like it's just, there's going to be a lot. So that's why putting yourself first is important, is actually, it's vital. It's vital. You can only help people as far as you're looking after yourself, right? It's that old cliche, but my goodness, it's never been more true at all. So you've got to be that, you know, really like use your whole body as if it's the most valuable asset. And it is because the light you hold in your body is so powerful. It's beautiful, but it's like, look after that. And so don't fall into the trap of, I've got to wake people up now and put all my energy into waking everyone up to get really exhausted and depleted, because that's not serving them. And it's definitely not serving you. So there's a time and place. Your missions they're going to click in. They're going to click in because that's why we're here. So it's a lot to be excited about, but there's a lot. So it's quite chaotic, but disclosures as well. I think a lot more. It's already starting to trickle in. We're having little trickly bits coming in. That's going to get, I think, increase. So that's good, because I think anything that comes to light is good. But again, tough. It's tough, isn't it, to see all this, you know? So yeah, not an easy year, but a very memorable one. We'll definitely look back on this time as a huge, huge period of transformation, and we'll be really, really proud that we were here, and that we were part of it. That's what I keep coming back to. It's like, we came here, we did choose to be here. That's the good news, even though it doesn't feel like it sometimes. And how brave and courageous. You know, we didn't have to, but here we are.
I love that you said that because that's actually something I said to my dad the other day, but it's something I live in personally. And I've been living in this since last year. Because, like you, I thought I was on mission. And then apparently we needed a pandemic or a fake pandemic for me to go, oh, right. I dropped into it.
Yeah.
But I remember thinking every time I post on social media, like I could be posting all the time about this, but I actually feel for me it packs a bigger punch when I just post about maybe once a week or maybe once every 2 weeks about the kind of stuff you and I are talking about. This is the kind of stuff I talk about on here or in some of my
Mhm.
containers on social media. I don't really have the bandwidth to fight with people, and I'm okay if people fight with me, right? But I feel like it packs a bigger punch. If some people, they're just memeing the bejeepers
Yeah,
out of their
yeah,
timeline, and
yeah.
then you kind of just tune them out because I don't want to be that person. But anyways, I was thinking, am I going to be proud of how I showed up? Like, if people are proud of letting their family members stay in a nursing home and not advocating for
Mhm.
them and thinking that it's okay to leave them there. Like, I know of some nursing homes here where they've been in like an apartment style long-term care facility. They haven't been able to leave their units for 13 months. How are you okay with that? They're
Mm,
paying anywhere between 5 to 8K a month. They're supposed to be given all kinds of activities, and you get it. There's all
yeah.
kinds of weird stuff that happens in those places anyways. And they're happy to take your money and maybe not deliver. Are you
Mhm.
happy that you had to have a funeral for a loved one over Zoom? Like, is this really, as a society, what we're going to be proud of when we look back on
Mhm.
this time? Because nobody wanted to stand up, right? They were waiting for someone else to do it, or they were waiting for someone else to save them. Are you
Mhm.
proud of, stalking someone in a grocery store because you actually are the one that doesn't want to wear a mask? So instead, you're going to stalk the person that isn't because you kind of wish that you had the balls to be that person.
Yeah.
All the things. I at least need to live with myself and say, okay, have I done everything that I'm guided to do, that I'm meant to do during this time, so that I feel like I've brought my A game every
Mm.
single day? And I'm not talking about being perfect, right? I
Mm.
think you're right. Like, we have days where our A game means shutting it all off and just taking care of ourselves for the day, right? And other times
Mm.
it's more of that outward stuff. But I
Mm.
know that you carry on these conversations all the time in your community, and
Mm.
you are vocal on your social media page, and you're helping
Mm.
people navigate this. So what's the best way for people to stay in touch with you and learn more about what you've got going on?
Yeah, so I've got a website. Is probably at the moment the best way because I don't know what's going to happen with Facebook and things, but I'm on Facebook more. So I have a Facebook page, but I'm not really, it's more my personal profile. So you can look me up on Facebook, Marie Fleming Grant, but I've got a private Facebook group on there, the Awake Revolution Soul Team. I don't tend to talk about sort of the politics and the things on that group because it's so divisive. Everybody's different. So really in there, it's more about expanding your consciousness and getting all the stuff we talked about today, working on yourself. So that's my group that I'm in there. So anyone can sort of join there. And on my website, yeah, there are ways to work with me, connect with me on there, join my email list. That's the main place on my website. And Telegram is something I recently kind of dabbling in. I kind of like Telegram. It's quite a nice, I don't know, it feels quite nice. It's quite new. So yeah, I've got a
Mm.
Telegram channel, but those are the main places to connect with me. That's where I am at the moment. But yeah, if in doubt, if you can't find me, the website, I'll definitely be there. That's probably the best place.
Yeah. And that's the
So it's
awakerevolution.com
yeah,
for everyone listening.
thewakerevolution.com. Yeah.
And we'll also put this in the show notes, everyone. So don't stress if you don't have a pen, or you're feeling like your brain might not remember that. We'll have that in the show notes, plus your social media handles and so
Yeah.
on. So thank you for being here and sharing your wisdom. I really appreciate you. And before we wrap up, do you have any parting thoughts for people that
Hmm.
you want to leave?
Yeah, loads of stuff. But I'll just choose one. Yeah, I think it's just for those who are listening, because I know the people listening to this you're fully awake and you get it. It's like really just reminding yourself of your power, because you probably all know it, but there are days when we forget and we feel insignificant, that maybe we're not doing enough, or we haven't spoken enough or convinced people enough. Just trust in yourself that you, even just being here, in your physical body with the light that you have, with the consciousness that you have, is already having a huge impact. If you could see it, the ripple effect, you would be blown away by it. So it's just remembering that, trusting that, and knowing that even if you, sure, you're speaking up and sharing, but even in the absence of all of that, you just living and breathing, existing and being here on this planet right now is doing the whole planet amazingness, amazing job. And we're going through this ascension and we're all doing it together, and we're all scattered across the planet, and we're all connected. Everybody here listening to this, we're of a similar like-minded consciousness, so we're all connected. We're just doing our job in different parts of the world. So just remember, find ways just to breathe into that every day. Remember your power. Remember that you came here on a mission and you are doing an amazing job just by breathing, and that's important to remember.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Marie,
So
for being
welcome.
here. Thanks to all of you for joining us today. We'll wrap it up for now, and we'll see you again next time. Bye for now.